Welcome, loyal listeners, to yet another episode of The Literary Lounge. I'm Martin, joined by David and Vala. Today, we delve into a gripping and thought provoking subject: the government's use of propaganda during times of war, inspired by the experiences of Margie in the graphic novel Persepolis. The year is 1979, and the Rex cinema fire in Iran claimed the lives of around 400 people. Margie's parents initially believed it was the Shah's doing, but it turned out to be the work of the Shah's Secret Service. This event marked the beginning of a series of government actions aimed at controlling the narrative of the population. As stated in the book, Margie clearly is set on who the perpetrators are, but is it known who are the real perpetrators?
It's fascinating how one event can set the stage for a series of actions that shape an entire nation's narrative. The closing of bilingual schools and the mandatory enforcement of the veil added to the government's grip on the people.
Margie, propelled by these events, actively participated in the Black Friday demonstration against the Shah. Little did she know, this demonstration would become one of the deadliest and most dangerous protests in Iranian history.
And yet, Black Friday, a day now associated with shopping discounts, was a day of tragedy in March's past. The government's propaganda extended to education, with claims of Western education being decadent and a push for revisions in school books to align with Islamic values.
The Shah used his powerful position to make teachers lie to their students, to alter news reports, and to lie to the public's face about what was going on in their country. He manipulated an entire country, which would have consequences, but not until later, when people had already suffered. That was that's when he felt threatened enough to leave the country.
Fast forward to the war between Iran and Iraq, and the government spread false news reports about military successes. Margie, using her critical thinking skills, questioned the inconsistencies in the reports and even found her teacher spreading misinformation about the Shah. Why do you think the Islamic regime used propaganda?
Well, the Islamic regime was entirely relied on victory in the war, on their rise to victory. No, I mean like on their rise to power. So they used propaganda and spread lies about the situation and numbers in the war, as Margie says on page 79 and 114.
They weren't entirely relying on victory in the war. They were relying on being in a war to rise to power and have the people unite. That's why they rejected the settlement with Saudi Arabia and Iraq.
Are you saying that the Islamic regime wanted to brainwash the young children and next generations?
Yes, that is what I'm implying.
In the book, we can see Margie and her classmates rebelling against beating their chests. Why is that?
Well, those children and that generation knows better than to wear a veil, beating their chests and simply keeping the traditional values of the Islamic regime in the Middle Ages. Women and people don't want to go back to the Middle Ages. They want to revolutionize and modernize their country.
The lies continued from misinformation about the war's origins to, concealing the bombing of the refinery of Abadan. Rumors and lies about ballistic missiles in Iraqi's army added to the confusion. Um, the regime even manipulated young minds by promising riches and paradise to children who fought and died in the war.
They want to keep the people clueless. That's why they ban Western schools and just teach religion. That's why the banning of schools was so important to the Islamic regime in the road to glory.
How was it for a young girl like Margie to experience these things at that age, such as being forced to wear that veil and everything else? I mean, children are more easily influenced by propaganda.
It was probably also so confusing when their school books, which were filled with ideologies of the Shah being chosen by God, and then everything they thought was true turned out to be false. Then children were reprimanded for questioning this sudden change of perspective. it was a complete U-turn.
Exactly, and then suddenly the children were supposed to rip out all information and pictures of the Shah who was supposed to be chosen by God. So it was confusing being hit with this heavy dose of propaganda by people who were supposed to be their mentors and taught them everything in school.
It's quite comparable to groups like ISIS who use propaganda to control their population. Internet restrictions limit exposure to external information, making resistance challenging for those who never had access to alternative perspectives.
Well, it's not as comparable as you think. When this took place in Iran and in Persepolis, there was no internet to influence the public. If the events of Persepolis took place today, I think we would have a different outcome in the Iranian Revolution.
Various political movements across the Muslim world have employed propaganda to promote causes and articulate outrageous ideologies. It's essential to emphasize the nuanced nature of Islam and recognize the diversity of viewpoints within the Muslim community.
We here at the Literary Lounge, we challenge narratives and push for the truth beyond propaganda as we consider Margie's journey and its greater consequences. We're going deeply into the details of the events and tell the story of the Middle East. So I just want to say thank you for tuning in and joining us in this insightful episode of the Literary Lounge. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions. Until next time, I'm your host, Martin, joined by David and Vala, signing off.